to Surrogate Social. I'm Monica, and I have a special guest with me, Kristen Armstrong, attorney here actually in San Diego. So thank you so much for joining me here in studio. I'm so excited. So Kristen and I have worked together for quite some time now, like almost like 8 years maybe.
Yes, it's been a good time.
So thank you so much for being here with me today. So I wanted to kind of talk to Kristen about her expertise of surrogate reviews, contracts in general with third-party reproductive law, and go over just some aspects of, we wanted to talk about transparency in contract reviews and things like that. So I just wanted you to share a little bit more about your background in law, and then just kind of about transparency and what you really see and what's so important for you to know that everybody understands.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I love your office.
Thank you.
This is great. I love the brick wall.
Thank you.
This is great. Like Monica said, I've been working with her for close to 8 years. I've been practicing law for 20, almost about 20, but I've been in the surrogacy world for about 8 to almost 10. And I also have a healthcare law background. That's the other aspect of my practice. And that seems to be a really good complement to representing surrogates and even intended parents when there's like a medical bill issue or patient privacy, like somebody, wants to know more about medical records and the status of things or not. And it's a good complement, and I'm actually a happy lawyer. I love what I do, and I work with great people, and truly work with great people. Yeah. And this is a really great area of law, and you do amazing things making babies all over the world. So
yeah. We were talking about that today, that it's when we really break it down, it's quite an amazing thing to be a part of, to watch the parents become parents and watch the surrogates sacrifice what they sacrifice to help the families form. We kind of have to step back and really remember that, right?
Yeah. And so the name of my practice is actually Global Healthcare Law Group. And it's everything you just said, like it's a global effort in a way to make a baby in the surrogacy world. And I just think that's the coolest thing, all the logistics on a global level for everybody, and everybody's, different ethnicities, different cultural backgrounds, and everybody coming together to make a baby is, it's super cool. So, what I wanted to kind of share, or what we wanted to talk about, was whether you're a first time surrogate or a second time surrogate, there's, we want to talk about this word transparency and how to go about your journey and have the best journey, hopefully, for you.
Yeah, smooth.
A smooth journey.
Yeah.
And from a legal standpoint, the legal process is 2 steps. First, you have the contract with the intended parents, and because we're going to kind of approach this right, like from a surrogacy standpoint.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, when representing the surrogates, 2 steps. There's the contract phase, which is, we review the contract with the surrogate. We make sure the benefits package that the agency promised to the surrogate is reflected accurately in the contract. Because if it's not, and it's something different, that's what governs. So if you were promised a base of $55,000 and the benefits package at the end of the contract says $30,000 and your attorney doesn't catch that, that's an issue. And you are held to the $30,000, not the $55,000 that was promised to you. So we go through the contract and we go through like certain key terms of it, along with the compensation. And then the second phase is the parental rights phase, which is once you're about 15 weeks pregnant, the attorneys get together and we draft up a bunch of documents and submit them to the courts. And request the court grant parental rights to the intended parents and not to you as the surrogate, because your goal here is to not become the mother.
Right. And not be on the birth certificate, right? So
exactly. And that's the beauty behind California law, is we get this judgment from the court before the baby's born, and you go and give birth, and the intended parents walk into the hospital and get the wristbands, and they have their baby, their names go on the birth certificates, and they get stuck with the medical bill for their baby. And you go home and you've done this amazing, incredible thing.
So you go home and sleep.
Yeah, you can rest because you don't have a newborn.
Right, exactly.
And then you can, maybe do it again or just reflect on this amazing thing that you just did. So going back to the first phase with the contracts and with the whole journey overall, if there was one thing I would tell, especially a new surrogate, is you are absolutely entitled to transparency in your journey. And along the way, you should never feel like you're in the dark about where you are in the journey, what's happening, whether it's how much money am I supposed to be compensated for that? Or when does this start? Or am I supposed, what's the next step with my medication or anything? You should always have a good open relationship with your case manager at the agency. And everything should feel pretty crystal clear to you. There should be no ambiguities. So when you're reviewing the contract, arm yourself, like educate yourself, like empower yourself. Read the contract. I always tell my clients, read the contract, because this is your bread and butter. But if you can walk away from this, like understanding basic contracting principles, you can go through life and know that this is, I know that I'm entitled to this. I know that, that's not right or that's not fair, because you have a basic understanding of contracts.
Like the terms, right?
The terms.
Because it's a daunting agreement. Yeah.
35 plus pages.
If not more sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be, maybe the first time a surrogate has entered such a lengthy contract, or even above a lease agreement maybe. And so it can be intimidating, or even kind of get a little wordy and redundant.
Absolutely.
And so, right, like sometimes I get a little cross-eyed, right? Yeah. So I always tell the girls, like, it's a lot of lawyer talk, but read through it, and it gets redundant. So that would be your recommendation. Read through it before they have their consultation with you.
Every time. Yeah. I know so every time we send over the first draft to the surrogate, we tell them, please read through this, and then we'll have a call. And I have gotten on the phone with some of my clients. They're like, I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to read it. And I said, nope, we're rescheduling the call.
Oh, interesting.
Because I don't want our phone call to be the first time they're looking at this document. I want them to sit down and drudge through it. Take the time. While it is a straightforward yet dense document, it's important.
Right. You gotta know what you're agreeing to.
Yeah,
you're big.
Exactly. Like you're carrying a baby for somebody else, and be familiar with it so that when we do talk, it doesn't all just sound like fresh material.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, you need to make sure there's not like something extra, like on a food requirement or, a limitation that you weren't aware of, or, something that you're agreeing to. Then if it comes back like from the agency side and I say, oh, well, you can't do 1, 2, and 3, and then you're blindsided, right? So we're back to transparency again then, right?
Yeah. And that's it. Like reading the contract will help things become more transparent to you. Certain things, like when you're pregnant and you're being seen by your treating OB/GYN and they recommend the flu vaccine. Well, under the contract, you might have to give 5 days advance notice before you go and get a vaccine. So those are the things that these little obligations that you didn't even realize could be an issue are actually set forth in the contract. Another one is getting your nails done.
Yeah, I was just going to say, or hair dyeing, or even back to vaccines. Like if you are a surrogate that listed that as one of your restrictions to not get vaccines, you need to make sure that wording is inserted correctly.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like because some of the provisions are broadly written, and I'll tell my client, this means that if the doctor recommends a vaccine,
you've got to get it.
You've got to get it.
And there's no way around that.
Nope. There isn't.
Even if you requested it from the beginning. So, and then unfortunately, like from my side, from the agency side, even though you listed that in your profile in the beginning as a restriction, if that didn't get inserted into the contract correctly, now it's open-ended. So then now you're obligated under the terms. Correct. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's the 4 corners.
Right.
It's called the 4 corners doctrine. Right. Everything that's set forth in the 4 corners of the document.
Now she's got to get that vaccine.
Yep.
Just because we requested it basically in the beginning as for one of her restrictions. If it's not written in that contract, now she's got to get that vaccine.
Yep.
Right. So that's back to transparency, right? So we were transparent in the beginning. We made it known in the match, but if it doesn't get inserted, that one sentence.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
one sentence.
Sometimes it's like a difference of a comma.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
Or do not, or shall, or may. It's definitely.
So, okay. So, and then, obviously you would be representing the surrogate separate from the intended parent's attorney. So explain why that's so important. Obviously a conflict of interest, but explain, like, if a surrogate's watching this, why that's so important and why that's protecting them.
because I'm here advocating just your interests.
Mm-hmm.
And if I represent the intended parents and you, I can't fairly protect you because I also have to consider their interests. Also, it's California law that everybody has their own separate lawyer. So you and your partner, if you're married or engaged or you're living with somebody, you and your partner, you have your own legal team. And then the intended parents have their own legal team. And California law specifically says that it is an attorney of your choosing. So the agencies can recommend a certain attorney, but you are not under any obligation to go with that attorney. And there are agencies that will say, no, you have to work with this attorney, and that's a red flag. It's the law specifically says you're choosing.
So and that's a great point. So typically I would say that most surrogates don't have an opinion about that because like they don't know a third party, right? So they'll typically say, okay, well, who do you recommend? Or they will recommend, like I usually say, okay, girls, this is who we're recommending, or
recommending,
right?
Like,
right, but it's not a requirement. Or I'll say like, here's the like basically here's the referral. And like, but it never ever going to require it, right? But so you do have a choice in it. And some girls, like especially Provens, will come back. I mean, I've had that with you actually. They'll say like, I had Kristen last time, and then they'll be like, can I have her again? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Like that's super cool, right? That's super easy. Or like we'll have girls that will do inquiries and they'll say, well, I use this attorney for my, is that totally fine? Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with intended parents. Like, yes, everybody kind of has, even like with clinics or, you have your kind of preferred professionals that you like, but I'm never going to tell an intended parent or a surrogate, like, absolutely not. These are the only professionals I work with, right? So I guess that would be back to transparency. What?
Yeah.
Why am I telling somebody no if that's who they're comfortable with?
Exactly. Right. And empowerment. Like, I feel for me, one thing I've learned about myself is when I'm in unknown territory for myself, it can be intimidating, and you can kind of tell yourself like, oh, I'm just going to let that slide. I'm just going to keep going with emotions. And I've taught myself, like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, true. Take a minute. And if something feels unknown, something feels murky, or you're just not clear about something, stop and ask questions. So this attorney, well, who is it? Can I go look at their website? Like, or, go to Google yourself and, or to the messaging boards, I mean, I know a lot of, there's a great supportive community out there.
Right. Be careful about going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But
be careful. But empower yourself with knowledge and research when you are in unknown territory.
That's true. Yeah.
So when you're choosing your attorney or when you have the contract, you empower yourself by actually sitting down and reading that beast of a document, because it is 35 to 45 pages, but it's yours. It's your journey on paper. Yeah,
because quite literally, like back to the compensation, like if it's not drafted and signed correctly, there's absolutely anything I can do once that's signed and finalized, right? Like, so from an agency side, like if it's missed, which this doesn't happen often, but like this is a great example.
Right.
Like if one amount is different than what is agreed upon in the benefit package, there's absolutely nothing I can do beyond that point to get that compensation changed. Again, like where I'm bound by that contract also. I can't release funds beyond that, right?
Correct.
Right. And so then...
And escrow can't.
Correct.
Escrow has to follow with the contract.
Right. So then it's icky from there on out. So everyone feels... it feels icky after that, right? So you feel like as a surrogate, like, oh, that doesn't feel right. Like, that's not what I agreed to. We feel icky. Like, I don't love it. Like, and so, it just... Then it spirals from there.
Yeah, it sets the
tone.
The energy gets a little off kilter.
Yeah.
But I mentioned the escrow, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
Escrow is super important. Escrow is a third party, money holder, for lack of better words.
Yeah. So it also can be called a trust account. Yeah. Sometimes that term can be used, but it's the same thing.
So when you are reading through your contract, take a look at the escrow schedule and make sure that make sure you're working with a reputable agency who will make sure that the escrow schedule the deposit schedule is followed, but correct. Like, some provisions in the contract regarding escrow just say the intended parents are going to fund the escrow. And it's like, well, when? How much? And I just actually had a case where this contract said that. And I went back. I said to to the surrogate, look, I don't know what the escrow schedule is, and we've got to make sure that there's definitely a substantial amount of money in there.
There was no dollar amount
There
listed.
was no dollar amount
Interesting.
listed. The requirement was just that the intended parents have to fund the escrow. It's like,
interesting.
well, so I went back to the intended parents attorney and I said, because my red line of my edit of the contract said, please put in the escrow schedule. And luckily, because this was an agency that I've actually never really worked with, the surrogate had requested me. And they said, well, they require a 6-figure deposit before the embryo transfers even takes place. So point is that there's no escrow schedule in the contract because there's supposed to be substantial amount of funds before the embryo transfer even happens. Okay.
They put that in the contract,
Put that in the contract. And also, this is the deal. This is the way this agency operates. My client, like, make sure that money is in escrow the second after you sign this contract, and especially before you do the embryo transfer.
Valid. Yeah.
So as the surrogate, empower yourself again to ask questions about escrow. You can't control the money. You can't access the money. You can't wake up one day and say, oh, I want a new blender. I'm going to go to the escrow.
Right. Or you can't say, I want a car or something silly.
Yeah. Like, I need,
Right. But protect yourself.
Yeah. And especially know what the contract says as far as the escrow schedule, because usually there's a certain deposit, made before the contracts are signed. And then there's another deposit made after the contracts are signed before the embryo transfer. And then, when there's 15 weeks of pregnancy or right after, confirmation of heartbeat, around like 7-8 weeks of pregnancy, there's another deposit. You want to make sure that those escrow deposits have been made. And how do you find out? You talk to the agency, or you might even be able to call the escrow company directly, but you can talk to your agency coordinator.
Right. Yeah. Again, so that's back to transparency, right? Like, is there anything kind of wacky going on with your payments, which shouldn't, but if that's happening, the deposit schedule should be listed, very clearly in their contract. That should never be hidden from you. So your medical bills are getting covered, your health insurance is getting covered, like all of that should be standard. So again, back to researching, going with the right agency, going with your intuition, those things. Like when something feels off, it's off, right? Yeah. So it's like when you meet someone like, out in the world, if you feel good about it, then typically, trust your intuition. So same thing with selecting an agency, selecting providers that are going to care for you and, provide you health care, those kind of things, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then let's explain like that, how like they don't need to appear in front of a judge or anything like that. So like, it's quite literally the review with you, which is done virtually, an email very easily, signing the contract in front of a notary, which is done like, at a mailbox store, their bank, or
even online.
Online. Super easy
really
now.
Super easy.
And then the judgment phase, which is later in pregnancy, they don't typically have to like appear in court or anything like that. So it's fairly easy contract versions, right? So anything else they need to know in that regard?
No. The judgment phase, which is the establishing of parental rights to make sure that you don't go on the birth certificate, is super easy. My clients, we send them the paperwork, we tell them to read it because it's, like I said, empower yourself, read these court documents, and then you'll find like they're very straightforward. They're, you signed this contract and you had no intentions of having a parental relationship with the baby that you're carrying. This baby is for the intended parents and they agree to, and you're going to give birth and you are going to not claim any parental rights and they're going to take the baby because the intention is this is their baby. So when you read the paperwork, nothing should be a surprise. And then your attorney usually just says, sign it, because you just want to sign it. Because if you don't sign it, well, then one, you're theoretically in breach of your surrogacy contract. And two, you could be on the birth certificate.
And why not? I mean, there's no reason not to sign it, right?
It's like the easiest. And what's interesting is that the way the court paperwork is set up is it's establishing parental rights, but it is actually a lawsuit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the intended parents, it's a happy lawsuit, Monica. The intended parents are the plaintiff, which is the petitioner, and the surrogate is the defendant, which is also called the respondent because they're responding to the lawsuit that was filed. So the lawsuit that's filed is, hey, we're the plaintiff and we are seeking that parental rights be established, determined in our favor and against the surrogate. So sometimes my clients, the surrogates, are like, wait a minute.
What does this mean?
This is saying I'm being sued. I'm like, well, you technically are, but it's a good lawsuit. And it's all confidential, never public record.
That's what I was going to ask. So like, what does surrogate say? Like, like if there's ever a time, like, have you ever had a lawsuit filed against you? Is this ever going to come back to them later in life? When they're applying for a job or a home loan or something like that? It never comes back as like on their record or anything like that.
It doesn't, because it's all under seal. And so, and then you just sign the paperwork, and it's not, obviously it's not the traditional lawsuit of paperwork being going back and forth. It's just you sign it and everybody agrees. Everybody stipulates like, yes, the intended parents are suing in theory to establish parental rights. And the surrogate's like, yeah, I agree. That's their right, judge.
Yeah.
Give them parental rights. And the judge is like, that's right.
Yeah.
Order. Or whatever.
And the stamp goes
because
on.
I don't even go to court. I'm like, I don't even know what the judge says.
I know. That stamp goes on there.
Yeah. So because California is so surrogacy friendly that certain counties require a hearing or an appearance by the attorneys, but most of them don't. We just file the agreed upon paperwork to the court, and the court's like, granted, and they put the seal on it, and they have their baby, they go home with their baby, and you go home and you take a nap. So easy. I mean, easy in the grand scheme of all of it. It is kind of easy, like with the other aspects of law, know, and it's not contentious, and everybody's getting along, and
so I kind of explain the girls that too. Like I always kind of use, like, it's not like in like Law and Order where there's like these negotiations of contracts back and forth. You know what you're agreeing to basically when you go into it. You know the terms basically. Like you're not going to put yourself in harm's way. Like the parents are the parents, you're the surrogate. So it's not this like back and forth of like these negotiations of contracts, right? It's very peaceful. It's basically you're looking for mistakes in the contract, and making sure that you're understanding what you're signing, right? Would that be a good, easy way to kind of explain it in non-lawyer terms?
It is. No, it's true, because by the time we go to by the time the contract phase comes and the lawyers get involved, everything
should be
smooth and agreed upon,
right?
Because you've already reviewed a benefits package with the agency that lays out your whole compensation schedule. The intended parents have agreed to it. And then the agency already has specific policies and procedures in place about certain things and these policies and procedures should be fair. For instance, life insurance. If an agency doesn't require life insurance, run, because that's basic human decency. Another thing is medical expenses. How long the intended parents are responsible for your medical expenses. Usually agencies require 3 months post-delivery, but if there's a complication, it extends another 3 months to 6 months total. So I always tell my clients, don't talk yourself out of anything. If you give birth and like things feel a little off, go to the doctor, especially in the initial 3-month window, because you're doing this amazing gift. You should not go into medical debt about this.
100%. Yeah.
So with these specific policies and procedures in place,
make sure you're protected.
It makes sure that, that's the agency protecting you and respecting you. And also, those things are already in place. So by the time the contract comes to me, I already know, like, oh, this is supposed to be in place. These standards, these provisions are supposed to be there. They are. Everything's agreed upon in advance.
Yeah. So then it takes us full circle right back to transparency, right? Like, what are these standards? Was this talked about? And so in theory, then it should be a fairly easy review, right? Like,
it usually is.
Surrogate should basically for the most part, understand, and it shouldn't be like, wait, what does this mean, right? So it's like the travel provisions, like all that should be somewhat understandable.
And the travel provisions always talk about this.
Not leaving the state after a certain week of pregnancy, not traveling a certain amount of miles from the delivery hospital. Those are pretty standard.
Well, I mean, all of it, definitely standard. One of the big ones is you don't leave the country throughout the term of the agreement. And we're in San Diego, and sometimes we have surrogates that have family in Mexico. Like I even go over to Mexico, for some food, and I come back real quick, just for lunch. You can't do that when you're under contract. But, I always talk about that with my clients. And then if they have like some family over in Mexico, like right over the border or something, sometimes it can work out, like, especially if they have the fast pass. So it's not an immediate, like an automatic no.
Right. But provisions had to be made and agreed upon prior to.
It has to be discussed
Right.
Before you sign
Right.
that contract. And then around 24 weeks of pregnancy, you usually stay within 100 miles of the delivering hospital, because week 23 is viability now.
Yep.
So week 23 is viability. If you're traveling, doing something in another state at week 20,
you deliver outside
and you deliver, and it's not a surrogacy friendly state, then
insurance,
it's your name might be on the birth certificate. We might be doing a post-birth adoption.
Yeah,
you have to follow those laws. Like it's snowballs. It's a big atomic bomb.
Right.
So that's why you always want to read the contract and think like, okay, do I have any plans for the next year? Do my kids have any tournaments?
Yeah, exactly.
In Vegas is luckily a surrogacy friendly state, but we always want to discuss this stuff.
Right. So, and again, so that's always back to, following,
Nevada.
Right. Well, like back to like asking questions, making sure that you understand, like, okay, well, can I travel to a volleyball tournament? And what does that look like? Or softball tournament, and not sitting on something. Like I always tell the surrogates, like, there's no silly question. The only silly question is the one you didn't ask, because then that's when we get into hot water. Because I can fix a question, but I can't fix something that wasn't asked.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe we can get, if it's like 23 weeks and 2 days, but we can get a doctor approval for you to go to that tournament because everything's great in the pregnancy, right? So, but if we don't ask, we can't talk about it. And so we just always want to make sure we stay in the terms of the contract. We're not, breaching contract, because that's like a big, ugly word, right? And then it's very scary. But, so again, just asking questions, advocating for yourself, making sure you have a really great support system, agency, clinics, all of that. And then they can also come back to you, even though you're with them for a very short time. Like, I know you always leave a very open door to the girls.
I do. You all have my cell.
Yeah.
You do. And no, it works. It really does work.
Yeah. And so I always appreciate that you always leave a very open door for them. Like if they have questions later on, even, when it comes up, it doesn't often come up, but if there's questions, you do leave that door open to them. You don't just like,
the contract's signed, I'm done until it's time to establish parental rights.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that, if you work with a cell, you have the attorneys that you recommend because you know their work history, you know their approach. So the attorneys don't do this that you work with. They don't, whether it's me or a different attorney that represents the surrogates, because the cell all the agencies have like their preferred network. They have their preferred clinics. They have their preferred escrow companies. They have their preferred attorneys. I would imagine that you don't have attorneys that will literally slam the door in the surrogate's face when the contract is signed and says, nope, I'm done until it's time to establish parental rights.
Right.
And so if you do want to interview a few attorneys, ask them like, hey, after the contract's signed, can I call you? I promise to not call you like after hours while you're eating dinner.
Right.
But like if I have a question, if I'm worried about something, because this was not a cell at all, but this one surrogate called me up from another agency and she said, I don't know what's going on, because she was confused. And she goes, I live up in Bakersfield and the agency is telling me that I agreed to have a scheduled C-section in Irvine at midnight on a certain day.
Goodness.
And I was like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And I mean, she knew she could call her lawyer, and this was after the contract was signed.
Yeah.
And not working with that agency anymore.
Yeah.
And she isn't either. But
so everybody needs to have a safe space. So I think
you need to be able to call up your attorney. But there are times where I do tell my clients, like, you call me up anytime, but if you call me up for something that I know that you can find the answer in the contract, I'm not blowing you off, but I'm going to tell you, go look in the contract. I'm not doing it. Like, you want to know when you're supposed to get your maternity clothing? Nope, not doing it.
Yeah, there's one little section.
Because I want you to be empowered. Yeah, you don't need me to, give you that like spoon feed, for lack of better words. Like, you can do it. You can definitely do it.
Yeah, that's true.
You're a woman, your mom. Moms are the hardest people on the planet. So you can, you can do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for coming in to see our new space.
Awesome.
I really appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
All right. Okay, that's it. Miss Peyton.
She just wrapped it. She just told us to wrap it up. How was that?
Oh, it's
perfect. I know I talked a lot.
See,
hopefully you can use some of that.
Were we right on time?
Yeah, that was exactly 11. I just walked over.
Yeah, it was. Look at